The problem with being in a world that is controlled by a single entity is that anything can shift at any moment and become something different at the whim of that entity. So when the beldam is tired of your shenanigans, she'll turn people against you, turn animals against you, turn the plants against you. Heck, she can even turn the scenery against you by wiping everything clean and sticking you in a white void. And even now, Coraline doesn't seem to understand this. The other garden is about to become the wrong side of the tracks for her. Yet, she's about to waltz in as if everything is still cute and happy and eager to please. My child, please stop to realize that everything in the other world is a puppet designed to either trick or trap you. But let's go romp through the other garden for the final time and see if anything interesting pops out. Hey family members, I'm Megan, this is the Fangirl, and we're having a frolic through a demonic garden today. But first, I realized while editing the last video where Coraline is making a deal with the beldam that Coraline has a lot of black hair and just like blue streaks on top. Did you all notice this before? I swear I watched this movie on a continuous loop and I still find things I never noticed every single time. Anyways, Coraline has an undefined amount of time to find her parents and all the ghost children's eyes, and while she didn't know where to start at first because for some reason the idea of a wonder was not clicking in her brain, but the dripping of the kitchen sink brought Coraline to the window that overlooks the other garden, so now she knows where to go. Also, the spout of the sink faucet is very rusty and that's bothering me. That's probably the least perfect thing that we see in the other world at this point. Everything else in the kitchen is so nice and warm and clean. So how did the other mother neglect to make the faucet look its best? This is also the first time that we can see the other side of the kitchen, and there's some mop-like bucket and a pitcher on a small table in the background. But you know, it's not one of those Kool-Aid pitchers, it's one of those thick pitchers that usually comes with a basin for washing yourself, which really hasn't been used since indoor plumbing became a thing. So I'm guessing that's a nod to the 150-year history of the Pink Palace, but that could also help us date the beldam and when she's from if that's an item that she cares enough about to keep in her home. But Coraline has pieced together that the garden is the best place to start searching for the eyes, and she pushes open the creaky garden gate, which also looks rusted to me when it didn't before. And things are so dimly lit inside of the garden, but it's not like dark and ominous or really the least bit scary. So Coraline is glancing around and she's holding herself like her guard is up. But she doesn't seem afraid, even though she appears to be taking care to walk as quietly as possible as to not disturb anything in the garden. She passes these odd pod plants. Are they based on a real plant? I can't tell. Please comment and tell me. And these plants wait for Coraline's line of vision to be out of their sight before they move slightly to sort of follow her movement. However, despite the music being a little low and sparse so that we, the audience, are also guarded, the garden really doesn't feel threatening yet as a button-eyed frog pops out and gently ribbits to itself. And he's not hurting anybody, he's just a good little fella. Although the bleeding heart flowers do react more noticeably to Coraline's presence as they light up and vaguely clap their flappy parts at her. Hold on, wait a second though. I didn't notice until I was editing, but I think those flowers are actually bleeding down the brick wall behind them, which is probably why Coraline reacts in disgust. But as Coraline continues walking, the snapdragons with the horrifically realistic eyes start snapping, and they get more active and forceful until Coraline has to stomp them flat on the ground, which gives the stone well enough time to rise up, open this mouth-looking spot on it, and have these blue, watery-looking snapdragon-esque plants leach out of its mouth and seriously grab Coraline with hard, toothy bites. As Coraline's feet are pulled out from under her and she falls to the ground, receiving more bites and spilling the contents of her bag everywhere, Coraline screams and the plant starts rolling her up in their rope-like vines and dragging her to the mouth of the well. I think they're about to drown her. Fortunately, though, the random plant cutters that Coraline had grabbed fell out of her bag, and she's barely able to grab them and chop the flowers apart. And that was apparently the well's only move, because it immediately gives up and returns to its normal state, even though the vines could have still been used as ropes, even without the bitey heads. Like we've talked about before, I'm guessing that the other mother can only really control one puppet or a group of small puppets at a time, because as the well shuts down and Coraline is panting and scrambling to collect her belongings, we get this buzzing noise as a cluster of button-eyed hummingbird bees swoop in to attack. Were they bee-like before? Because I totally missed that if they were. But the group of 3 hummingbees work together to steal the seeing stone, and Coraline throws her driver's hat to stop them, which is literally the only reason that hat is in this movie. And come on, Coraline has a future in baseball, right? She had one chance to dislodge that seeing stone out of the air, and somehow she manages to hit all 3 hummingbees, knocking them and the stone to the ground. Not only that, but Coraline throwing a fairly soft hat ripped open all 3 hummingbees, and sand is spilling all over the cobblestones. Pretty sure now they're deceased. Coraline doesn't feel bad though, as she picks up the seeing stone and questions why would they want to steal this, before putting the whole of the stone up to her eye and realizing that everything in the other world is gray. Again, this feels like such a setup. If the hummingbees had left the stone alone, Coraline may have never looked through it, and it was already odd that the stone found its way back to her hat a few scenes ago, because otherwise Coraline would have never brought the stone with her. But as Coraline looks around, she sees a bright red spherical light that makes a twinkling sound, and she immediately realizes that that has to be the eye she's looking for. Okay, me personally, I'd have never pieced that together because, you know, humans have 2 eyes and the ghost kids all have 2 buttons. I really wish they would have kept this like the book, because there the kids say that the Beldam stole their souls. 1 soul, 1 object, perfect. Not 2 eyes that got mushed into 1 ball like slivers of soap. And as soon as Coraline pulls the seeing stone down to go after the glowing object, we find out that she was looking at the robotic gardening mantis, and it springs to life, except now it has the arms from the piano appearing to be holding the other father captive. The glowing sphere is the head of the gear shift, and the headlights of the mantis are blinding Coraline as the other father says, in a very distorted voice, "Sorry, Mother's making me." And the claws of the mantis are jamming hard against the ground, trying to strike at Coraline as she runs back towards the small bridge. And the mantis is following, but luckily, it's also still chopping and slamming at the ground as it tries to cross the wooden bridge. And so it makes itself a pit to fall into. As the machine sinks, the other father breaks off the right glove that's controlling him, then rips off the ball cover of the gear shift and calls out for Coraline to take it, which she does as the other father continues to sink. Okay, quick pause here, because a lot of people say that the other father and other YB aren't puppets that the Beldam controls, but she's already controlling everything about them and how they look. Are you serious? seriously convinced that she can't control them like a Fallout avatar. And I do hear you. On the surface, it doesn't make sense for the beldam to help Coraline and give her a child's eye. But again, this game is rigged and the house always wins. What this moment accomplishes is very skilled. For one, it tells Coraline that she can and should trust anyone who is not the beldam. And for two, it proves that Coraline can have her life ended in this place. Because the beldam doesn't care if she snuffs out someone's life. We just saw her hurt the other father. And it really felt like that garden was trying to end Coraline too. And that's going to help keep Coraline afraid enough to never return to the other world again. So she'll thereby be stuck in the Limbo Pink Palace forever. And if you think I'm stretching, I did cover early on that Coraline does not get home in the end because the radiator under the window is the wrong size. Anyways, Coraline can just barely snatch the sphere before the other father sinks under the water, calling out a soft but blood-curdling "No." It's so unsettling. And no sooner does the other father sink than the lily pads on the pond start to desaturate. And then everything around Coraline starts rotting away to a stony gray color, which signifies that the magical eye powering that part of the other world has been freed. But before Coraline can reason anything out, because that makes no sense due to the eye still being inside of that garden, the sphere glows red and a small male voice calls out, "Bless you, miss, you found me, but there's two eyes still lost." And we can see Huck Finn Jr. inside of the ball, but I'm still not having it. If the script wants to go with it being eyes, then there are 5 eyes still missing, as Coraline is only holding one circular object. But Coraline reassures Huck Jr. not to worry because she's getting the hang of the game. And only then are we shown a shadow casting over the moon at a pretty fast clip. Coraline notices it, then sees the pink palace and looks determined as she moves towards the basement apartment. We're stopping here this time because the nightmare fuel is only going to amp up next time. But let's check out some comments. Autistic Nation 7140 said, Coraline being reckless more than kids her age should make a lot of sense when you consider two things. 1, neglected kids typically hit growth milestones slower than other kids. And 2, reckless behavior can be a mild form of self-harm. And okay, no, this is actually a really good point. I have not seen a comment quite like this before, although a lot of you have gotten upset that I am too harsh on Coraline due to her age. But yes, I agree that people who are neglected can be a lot more reckless, not just necessarily for the reason of self-harm, but as a way to force themselves into the spotlight to get attention. You know, kind of like mom and dad have to stop everything and pay attention to me now because I ran away from home. Although the first point I'm not quite sure is as accurate. Neglected kids typically hit growth milestones slower than other kids. I have heard the opposite, that neglected kids tend to be hyper independent, and so they come off as very mature and very ahead of all the other kids their age. But then again, we only get a few seconds of seeing Mel and Charlie be parents before Coraline goes to the other world for the first time. And like I keep saying, once she goes in, I don't think she ever comes back out. So is Coraline truly neglected, or does she have overworked, overstressed parents who just had a car accident and moved across the country and started this new job with a tight deadline, and so they can't drop everything to make Coraline the center of the universe? I think you can pull things out of the movie that will let you come to either conclusion about Mel and Charlie, but still really interesting food for thought in this comment. Then Granatomy3719 says, did anyone else notice that Coraline's dad has 2 different types of glasses? Okay, I did see comments say over and over again that when we see Mel and Charlie in the mirror, he has his glasses and she has her neck brace. So there's at least 2 2 sets of everything in the house. But honestly, no, I didn't notice that Charlie's glasses were different. Although now that it's being said, I see it a lot more clearly. However, the bigger point I was trying to make, and I apologize if I did not make that clear enough in the words that I used, but the issue is I proved that Coraline is not in the real world when that scene happens. So when she makes the pillow parents and finds the creepy parent doll, that is still another section of the other world. And that might even be why the other world has that void in it, because so many resources are going to these sub-levels of the other world, you know, the limbo pink palace that looks just like the real world. So the Beldam can't keep the other part of the real world as nice as she normally would. Too many tabs open at once. But even though that is really interesting that there are multiples of all these objects, the point I was trying to get to was that Charlie leaving his glasses and Mel leaving her neck brace are more proof that this can't be the real world, because that's just not how normal people would act. You know, you don't get in a panic about your kid missing and then take off your glasses to go look for her. You don't come home from the store, see your kid is missing, and then take off your neck brace to go look for her. And so to me, just being able to find those other things around the house is more proof that it's not the real world right there. And that's what I was trying to get to. Again, sorry if I didn't do a good enough job of it. Finally, Tabby Louise said, "You missed this. You said it was weird the father and mother left the glasses and neck brace behind, but in the mirror prison, they're both wearing them." Which is true. I did totally miss that in the moment of analyzing. And this is not the other world's version, because when Coraline crawls through the door, the Beldam tricks her into thinking she's the real mum. And when she morphs back into the Beldam, she rips off the neck brace. So there's 3 neck braces. And you know, I didn't think of it in that light either, but you're absolutely right. The Beldam is wearing Mel's clothes, including the neck brace, and it's like the overshirt and coat melt off of her when she transforms, and the neck brace she just grabs and throws it. And that does very strongly imply that the mice brought her Mel's things. But what is really creepy is that she has Mel's belongings that match exactly to what Mel looked like the last time Coraline saw her. And again, if Coraline had really gotten home and that was the real world when she got in the fight with Mel and then Mel left for groceries, the Beldam had no button-eyed doll there to witness that, so how would she even know? There's no feasible way the Beldam should have known what Mel was wearing if that were the real world. So like these other things, I think that's another clue that Coraline never goes home after she goes in the tunnel the very first time. Alright guys, that's all I have today. Thank you for your comment contributions. They really do help me out in the algorithm, and I might be overthinking it, but that's literally my job. And to any of my members here on YouTube, a huge bottom of my heart thank you for all of your help and support. If you would like to become a paid channel member, there is a link in the description below. Thanks again guys, love you. Well, family members, we're almost done, but I want to invite you to hang out with me in some other places. I'm on Twitter and Instagram as my own personal self, and I have a Facebook page too, but I mostly just post photos over there. And sometimes people say, "Hey McGann, I want to mail you something. How do I do that?" Easy. Just click the About tab on my channel page, and my most current P.O. Box info will be right there. I also run another channel, The Family. It's really a hodgepodge channel where we might post anything. Oh yeah, and I also sell shirts and stickers and stuff with the Family and the Fangirl logos. If that is your cup of tea, I have a link in every description of every video. Finally, if you want to help out the Fangirl channel and make sure I'm putting out video essays for years to come, the best way you can help is by subscribing and watching more of my videos, whether they're new, old, whatever. Maybe even share 1 or 2 on social media, help spread the word. People who watch to the end of videos like you helps to tell the site, hey, this is a good video, we should recommend it to other people. So if you made it this far, leave me a comment of something like, hey, I made it to the end. Love ya. See you next time, family members. Bye.